Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. And we're going to kick off the morning show, very unsurprisingly so, in the Middle East, where Israel's military says it has launched a new wave of strikes, its 15th, on the Iranian regime's infrastructure. The Israel Defense Forces says it has also destroyed a military command bunker in Tehran that the late Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had planned to use with 50 fighter jets. Meanwhile, Iran has launched further strikes on Israel, the IDF says, while Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Bahrain say that they intercepted attacks overnight. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says that the U.S. mission in Iran is progressing rapidly and says the United States has ample military supplies and is prepared to continue its campaign for as long as necessary.
In just days of Operation Epic Fury, you and your team have delivered nothing short of devastating, precise strikes, taking out the better part of Iran's navy, making it combat ineffective, neutralizing missile sites and launchers, and establishing total dominance over the skies we fly over and seas we fly over. Our forces are executing with unmatched skill, and the mission is advancing decisively. Iran is hoping that we cannot sustain this, which is a really bad miscalculation for the IRGC in Iran. You see, there's no shortage of American will here. We remember and honor our fallen, those 6 that we will soon welcome at Dover, who gave everything.
In just the last 72 hours, America's bomber force has struck nearly 200 targets deep inside of Iran, including around Tehran. And in just the last hour, U.S. B-2 bombers dropped dozens of 2,000-pound penetrator bombs targeting deeply buried ballistic missile launchers. Notably, we've also struck Iran's equivalent of Space Command, which degrades their ability to threaten Americans. Then, if I just look back over the last 24 hours of the operation compared to where we were at its start, ballistic missile attacks have decreased by 90% since day one.
The
Air Force and Navy of the Army of the Islamic Republic of Iran launched kamikaze drones toward the occupied territories, targeting the Ramat David Air Base and the Meron radar site in the occupied lands. Additionally, the location of American terrorist forces stationed at a camp in Kuwait was another target of the Navy's offensive drones. The Army's ground force, continuing its operations against American terrorists stationed in Iraqi Kurdistan, targeted their headquarters in Erbil with its drones. Meanwhile, the Aerospace Force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, in the 19th wave of Operation True Promise 4 with the code phrase Hassan ibn Ali, launched Khorramshahr ballistic missiles equipped with heavy warheads toward Ben Gurion Airport. The ground force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, during the 19th wave of the operation, also targeted the positions where American terrorist forces were stationed in the Kurdistan region of Iraq by launching kamikaze drones.
Earlier on, after co-directing the operation that eliminated the late Khamenei, U.S. President Donald Trump has declared that he wants to be directly responsible for selecting Tehran's next supreme leader. Speaking to Axios from the White House, Trump ruled out Mojtaba Khamenei, the late supreme leader's son and a potential successor, called him a lightweight, and said that Washington wants a leader who will bring harmony and peace to Iran. Let's hear him.
I built the military and rebuilt it in my first term, and we're using it more than I'd like to use it, to be honest with you. But when we used it, we found out it certainly did work. When we look at Venezuela, when we look at the first attack, Midnight Hammer, in Iran, which really set the stage for what we're doing right now, it's been pretty amazing. And I'm once again calling on all members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the military and the police, to lay down their arms. They're only going to be killed. And now is the time to stand up for the Iranian people and help take back your country. You're going to have a chance after all these years to take back your country. Accept immunity. We'll give you immunity. And we'll be giving you really the right side of history, because that's what it is. So you'll be perfectly safe with total immunity, or you'll face absolutely guaranteed death, and I don't want to see that. They don't want to see it either. We also urge Iranian diplomats around the world to request asylum and to help us shape a new and better Iran with great potential. It's a country with great potential, has much better future for Iran. It's now beginning. It's going to be, I think, a great future, and the United States will ensure that whoever leads the country next, Iran will not threaten America or its neighbors, Israel, anybody. If you look at what happened, they had missiles aimed at all of these other countries, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, many others, that weren't really involved very much, and they had missiles aimed. Well, they were aimed there long before this ever started. They were going after the entire Middle East, and then we came along. We blew up their party. So we have phenomenal people. I want to thank all of the people that have been involved. Marco, you've been doing a fantastic job.
All right, President Donald Trump there, doubling down on why America is involved in this war that many people have condemned. But of course, there are two perspectives to the American side and the Israeli side, versus the Iranian side. I mean, who would have thought that in the holy month of March, both the Christians and Muslims are fasting, and that the first 1 week of the month will spend, talking about wars in the Middle East, the very heart of the two religions, so to speak, in the world. And that's where we have found ourselves, quite frankly. President Trump has said that it might take between 4 to 6 weeks, to prosecute this war. I'm not sure that everybody is totally clear as to the mission of this war. The Israeli ambassador, beg your pardon, was on our station, was it yesterday? And it was clear about, what this is about, for Israel. For 47 years, he says, Iran has been chanting, death to Israel, death to America, and the threat, were visible, and that any action taken by Israel, in his opinion, will be deemed, very necessary to counter a nation that is determined to wipe off Israel from the face of the earth. Americans, on the other hand, by Americans, I mean the American government, particularly Donald Trump, Peter Hegseth, Marco Rubio, those who speak for America, are saying that, yes, there's a clear threat. Yeah, there were negotiations, but they didn't quite get the vibe, that they wanted. And after 47 years, they thought that it was a game up for the Ayatollah and then for the regime. But of course, as we have witnessed between Russia and Ukraine, war is not something that is a tea party that you just walk through. Not even, what we've experienced in the past, twice with the Iraqi war. The Iranians are saying that, no, this fight will prosecute it to the last. And we're hearing little stories about the fact that, our own demands, apart from the fact that we deserve to fight back, is that we will want America to leave, the entire region, of the Gulf state and Middle State, which explains why not only are they facing directly Israel, given the fact that America is so far away, in terms of retaliation, they are also hitting all the targets, all the American targets, where they have military bases in the region. This is a war that is not good for the world, even though the context of the war from both sides, you can explain it. From the Israeli part, it is purely existential, and that no country, will sit down and hope that until the threat comes directly, to your doorstep before you react. America, on the other hand, is siding with Israel, as they have always done. For me, what I see is not just Donald Trump in this matter. It is the consistent American hegemony, the consistent pattern of how America places politics. Wherever there is oil, wherever there is a vestige of threat, and of course, wherever it needs to show dominance. I hope that the war is not deceptive in a way, because if we look closely, it may not just be about oil. It may not just be about the fact that America wants a peace in the region that will favor Israel. It could also be a targeted war that speaks to how they intend to reduce the influence of both the Chinese and the Russians as far as their access to oil and access to dominance in the region. I hope, of course, that this will end at some point, and the tragedy that it has brought to people, not only in the region, but of course it's affecting practically everybody. The price of, fuel all over the world is skyrocketing. Even though our country as a nation will make money, but we know that you and I will struggle almost throughout the month of March, if not throughout the month of, April, in terms of what the cost is bringing to the people of the world. But those are the issues. They are far deeper, than we can analyze in a few minutes. But of course, we know the context, and we know that the context has ended up here, where people are dying, destructions of unimaginable magnitude is happening. May peace prevail ultimately.
Yes, I like that you brought up the American hegemony, because whether it is Operation Urgent Fury when America invaded Grenada in 1983, or it's Operation Epic Fury when they began their bombardment of Iran last week, one thing is sure is that America will always act in its own strategic interests. I think what has changed under President Donald Trump is that America is no longer positioning itself as a moral actor. Before, America would position itself primarily as a moral actor, whether they're going against a bad guy, whether it's Gaddafi in Libya or Saddam Hussein in Iraq with America's invasion of Iraq. And they also would try and get the world to go along with them. With Iraq, it was the coalition of the willing. They try and get their allies, aligned on their side. But what Donald Trump has done is decide that America can go and do on its own, or with Israel, and attack another nation. And I understand there's this idea of, is there an imminent threat, and how can you have an imminent threat that lasts for 47 years? How is Iran still an imminent threat when we were told that Iran was bombed and their nuclear abilities was completely obliterated by President Donald Trump last year? How are we supposed to believe there's still an imminent nuclear threat from Iran if you remove those nuclear weapons? And of course, when it comes to Israel, the Israel side of things, are they acting for the peace of the Middle East, or are they acting to sow chaos in the region? Israel, of course, has bombed Lebanon, currently bombing Beirut. At least 120 people have been killed there this week. Bombing Iran, has bombed Syria, has bombed Iraq, all in this, has bombed Yemen, all in the last year. And Israel, of course, is the only country in the Middle East that has nuclear weapons. The IAEA...
Are we sure about that?
Huh?
Are we sure about that?
Well, it is the only...
The ambassador corrected that.
The ambassador says, but he's not the only spokesperson for the Israeli government, and this is something that has been spoken about by Mossad agents, by Israeli.
Sure an official Israeli position.
There is not an official
owning, nuclear weapons.
Yes. However, the International Energy, Association, I don't believe it's a conspiracy theory to say that Israel has nuclear capabilities and that they have, the strongest army in the Middle East. I don't think that's, much of a conspiracy. However, if we're talking about which country is actually going to invade other countries, America has invaded more countries than anyone else since World War II. They went to Panama, Iraq, Iran, Korea, Vietnam, Grenada, Dominican Republic, no one else. And this is not even including CIA-sponsored interventions in other people's countries, right? This is actual American boots on the ground. So if we're talking about who is working towards world peace, I don't think that we would say that this is necessarily for peace. And as you said, you spoke about oil. In 1953, when they had Operation Ajax and the CIA and MI6 sponsored the toppling of Iran's democratically elected government under the Prime Minister Mossadegh. They did that because of oil, because of British petroleum interests when Iran was trying to nationalize its oil and grow its country. Since then, I don't think Iran has had any political peace, and that was because of oil. If we look at what happened in Venezuela, of course, they said that they were going to get Maduro because of his bad actions. However, now America has not just access to Venezuelan oil, but as of yesterday, is now licensing Venezuelan gold. And Donald Trump's spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, released a statement saying, thanking President Trump for getting our oil from Venezuela. It's not even Venezuelan oil again, it is now our oil. When we are seeing these norms, whether they are whether they are necessary fictions that we have allowed ourselves to believe for a long time when it comes to American hegemony. Perhaps a strong America is good for the world. Perhaps they're the good cops, they're the police of the world. When we have allowed ourselves to believe this fiction, when it has now been turned on its head, and America has no longer even thought to pretend to act as a moral actor, we are seeing the world being drawn into broader conflict. Not only the Gulf states, but now Sri Lanka, even still maintaining its neutrality, is allowing Iranian ships to dock in Sri Lanka after a vessel was shot out of the Indian Ocean. We see Australia, we see Italy and Spain sending ships to protect Cyprus. We see the northern European countries, Sweden has announced they signed an MOU for a civilian evacuation plan that was announced about 3 days ago. We see the world preparing for conflict and bracing itself. I think, let's talk about what it's going to affect us here, particularly when it comes to oil prices.
Absolutely. But in all this, it's only one country that has been preaching, death to another country for decades. And when a country insists that another country does not deserve, to exist on the face of the earth, that's weighty for me. And of course, actions that are taken, by the country who seems to be defending himself, who is fully aware of the implications of another country saying that we do not want you to exist. I think that we should take that on board in the analysis that we may be given.
I do, but I also believe that actions always speak louder than words. And if somebody is shouting death, 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 but somebody else is bombarding or bombing multiple countries and invading multiple countries year in, year out, I think I'll take the action of dropping bombs on another country than I would the words of shouting death to a country. But let's move on to the next story now, because of the reverberations of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East is already being felt everywhere in the world, none more so here than in Nigeria, where the price of petrol and diesel have been spiking. There are also indications that those prices will continue to rise for the foreseeable future, leading to greater scarcity of the product. As of early March 2026, the Dangote Petroleum Refinery has increased its petrol gantry price to 874 naira per litre from 774 naira, citing global volatility in the crude oil markets. This adjustment follows a period of reductions earlier in 2026 and late 2025 aimed at providing competitive pricing, including a drop to 699 naira in December of 2025. Well, it's always good to be reminded that Nigeria is not immune from global shocks, and that, of course, Dangote Refinery is a private business that wishes to earn a profit. But let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz and the shocks to the global oil markets, because primarily what we're seeing here is that the Strait of Hormuz has basically come to a halt. Vessels are not passing that region. And we have also seen Aramco, slowing down its production. We have seen the Kuwaitis announce that they're also slowing down production due to the cost of storage of oil, because they're not able to send oil out. So they're even shutting down production. And we've seen it not only happen with crude, but also with LNG and national gas. So it's not just with petrol and diesel. Of course, we've also seen the price of diesel has increased. And it seems that the price of Brent, I believe it's heading towards 100 at this point in time. If it crosses to 3 digits, if it hits, $100, which it's likely to in the next couple of days, if this war continues in this way, then the world is going to feel it in their pockets. And this is one thing that I always like to stress to Nigerians, that we can have these macroeconomic conversations about much more oil revenue for our country is a good thing. But that is also in theory. We also have to remember that in Nigeria, that a lot of our oil is encumbered because we have been borrowing money. At a point in time, 300,000 barrels per day was going to service our debt and our loans. Yeah. So even if we're thinking about this macroeconomically, is the government getting more revenue? We always have to remember that this is why we go out and talk about how we need to be prudent when we're collecting our loans. We need to be prudent when we're doing crude, swaps for these loans, because of times like this, where instead of getting a windfall, we're probably just getting some relief. Now, and these macro things also how that money trickles down to the average Nigerian, that one is yet to be seen. What the average Nigerian will feel is that the diesel going into your generator is higher, the petrol going into your cars or your generators is higher. These things make life harder. And so that is also why we must focus on what is happening around the world, because we're very connected in this world. And, it's not even just the oil, it's also the transportation of trade and some of the things that we're going to be importing, and that inflationary pressure that might affect us, the small ones at the bottom, and not necessarily, the macro picture of Nigeria getting more money for crude.
Absolutely. I mean, a quick one on the Strait of Hormuz. I think that a space has to be tested. Given the fact that is one major weapon that Iran has always, wanted to use. So when President Trump says that we will, test it, we would allow, ships to pass and safeguard them. Let's see how that will work out. And if it does work out, then it means that in all this chaos, in all this madness, maybe there can be a bit of respite, for the world in terms of getting ships with oil to move about. But coming back home, like you rightly observed, in all of this, it's a double-edged sword, for Nigeria. Nigeria as a country will make more money, which was the whole point of, I think, a number of the guests that we had last weekend when the war broke out, and the analysis that, Nigerians should be ready. You will feel it in your pocket. Yes, Nigeria as a country will make money, because if I think we benchmark our 2026 budget on about $75 dollars, yeah. Even though before last weekend, it's been trading, crude has been trading far less, than 75. Now that it's now at 90 something, close to 100, and there is the expectation that he might even hit 150 if we are not careful. That will be a big deal for Nigeria as a country, given that crude is our everything. And Nigeria as a country will make money. That would mean that will even amount to almost doubling the budget, estimate, which is good for the country. But then the bad aspect will be that, the higher the crude price goes globally, the higher the pump price of petrol, and diesel here will go. And we have seen it is now almost 1,000. And part of what people have said is that it will, if you're not careful, it will cross the 1,000 mark, which means that we'll now be back to that, horrifying period of subsidies gone, and then everything hit the roof. And of course, the implications are there, to expect. Inflation will be impacted. The cost of basic things will be impacted. And if you'll be using more than 100,000, for those who can even afford it, to fill your tank, what that means in terms of transportation to the less, to the ordinary people and the ordinary Joes out there. This is the time that many Nigerians, shockingly, do not want to hear the word subsidy, because we have unwittingly demonized that word. But I think that what COVID and post-COVID has taught many people is that subsidy is never a bad word, and it's part of the responsibility of serious and government that show concern, that you must always intervene when things, get, or seemingly get out of hand. And we saw how subsidy was applied practically in all over Europe, in many parts of America and Canada during COVID, because people can just basically, not afford, certain things. And of course, towards electricity, towards energy cost, once energy is affected, there will be issues. So what will happen till the rest of this month and possibly, a good chunk of April? I think that our government should begin to consider what might be possible without demonizing the word subsidy. And subsidy is not, if you recall, you see that part of why, after demonizing subsidy, we're now, usually we'll be talking of, what's the word when they keep dashing rice, dashing these? Palliatives, palliatives. But you can subsidize things without, of course, getting entangled in the corruption of it momentarily, temporarily, so that you bring in the heat, you bring down the heat in the house. If crude price goes up to $150 a barrel, it will be tough for many Nigerians, because it will impact on transportation, it will impact on food items and inflation. So at this point, I think that what will be necessary is for government to begin to say, yes, we will make certain amount of money. It will be good for our financial projections, but then let's also think about Nigerians, hapless Nigerians who will struggle throughout that period. And I think that's how the government should approach it. We can't run away from that reality. The reality is upon us. This war will last for as long as necessary, according to Pig said. Trump says 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. Nobody can predict for how long it will last. But then for as long as it lasts, I mean, people will struggle. And Nigerian government should consider the people. If we make money from one hand, let us also look at the possibilities of assisting people on the other hand. Well, we'll move on. It's safe to say that many Nigerians will be happier this morning after President Bola Tinubu finally approved the postings of 31 non-career and 34 career ambassadors to various countries and the United Nations. This comes days after an Arise News special report on the delay in announcing the postings of the ambassadors designate. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Nigeria has already received agreement from the United Kingdom for the High Commissioner designate, Ambassador Aminu Dalhatu, and that of France, Ambassador Ayo Oke. An agreement is yet to be received from the United States for the posting of Kayode Are. The ministry says it has conveyed the nominations of the other 62 designated envoys to all the countries concerned, including a request for the agreement in line with standard diplomatic practice. President Tinubu has directed the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to immediately commence the induction program for the envoys designate. Here is a report.
Joseph Shola, E.G., Russia. Jimoh Ibrahim, United Nations Permanent.
Yes, we have our ambassadors list out now with Jimoh Ibrahim, Senator Jimoh Ibrahim being the senator sent to the UN as the UN permanent representative. The ambassador for a UN permanent representative, which is, I find it so bizarre to not have a career diplomat being sent to the UN at this point in time, but also the UN has come out to tell us that they're struggling to stay afloat with a lot of countries withdrawing funding, particularly the United States. And the UN Security Council, I believe, has not even met yet over the war in Iran. So, I guess even the international organizations are having legitimacy problems right now. We also have Reno Mokri, very famously
to Mexico.
Being sent to Mexico. There are a lot of jokes floating around that one. And Femi Fani-Kayode, former minister.
Tell me what about the jokes?
Former minister being sent there to Germany. For me, I think overall we definitely see that the juicy appointments are going what you call juicy, the nice countries, with Yakubu, the former INEC chair, there being sent to Qatar. Obviously, maybe not the best time to be heading to Qatar, but you see that these political appointments are going to these nice countries. And then you have career diplomats, the ones who are trained in diplomacy, the ones who understand the system, the ones who have formed relationships with diplomats of other countries, being sent to Khartoum and Sierra Leone.
Be kind to Khartoum.
There's nothing wrong with Khartoum. I'm just saying, would you rather go to Khartoum or Qatar?
Well, I mean, it depends.
It depends on if Iran is bombing. Okay.
An ambassador is an ambassador,
Yes.
I get your point. A number of people look at the things, except for about 4 or 5, countries that you will consider as big countries, Switzerland, etc. A majority of the career ambassadors seem to have been posted essentially to African countries, and countries that you will consider are not, where you really want to, go as an ambassador, especially if you're having a Reno Mokri in Mexico, Femi Fani-Kayode in Germany, the man who has just left, INEC, to Qatar, as you said. And then my man, Dr. Jimoh Ibrahim, he has a PhD, by the way, in addition to
so many titles, ambassador, senator, doctor. I was getting doctor.
I'm saying that academically,
Yes.
he has all those, titles, on merit. And so he will be Nigeria's permanent representative in the United Nations. For a sitting and first-time senator to have opted out, to have been, appointed to go as an ambassador. I will imagine that some thought will have gone into it, both on the side of government, and the president that is appointing him, and Barrister Jimoh Ibrahim himself, to say that I will give up my seat as a distinguished senator of the Federal Republic, and instead I'll go to the United Nations to go and represent Nigeria. I want to assume that a lot of deep thoughts will have gone into it. Yes, like you said, if you look at the number of the quality, and the qualifications of people who have represented us on that big stage, they have been largely career diplomats, even though many of them also have qualifications like Dr. Jimoh Ibrahim, PhD here and there, professor, here and there. And so I think it will be a challenge to him. And I do want him to succeed, and I hope that he will surround himself, with people who can get the job done for him so that he will represent us well. The same way that we want all the other ambassadors, Otumba Femi Pedro in Australia, Mrs. Ajimobi in Austria, many of them represent us well. It took us quite a long time to get to this point of appointing ambassadors. Now that they will be going, even though we're still waiting for the letters of concurrence and everything from all those countries, when they do get there, let them represent us, well. I'm not sure if there are journalists on the list. The last one that Buhari made, at least we had a couple of, media people who were selected. And I'm saying that, so that that profession...
You want to be an ambassador?
I'm saying that professional should not be overlooked, ultimately, given, of course, the relationship that Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the president has had with this profession for a long time. There's still a good chunk of spaces to fill. So our charge is represent us well. Dr. Jimoh Ibrahim, congratulations, Mr. Sajimobi, all of them, all the 62 new ones. France and UK have said, yes, we agree. America is still dilly-dallying, on who will represent us.
They're a bit busy currently.
They're distracted, right?
They're a bit distracted right now. So, I think that will take it. Congratulations to those who should be congratulated. I think let's go on to
all of them.
To those who need to be. Let's go on to the next story, which is not one that's funny at all. A suspected Boko Haram and ISWAP terrorist on Wednesday launched a coordinated attack, an assault on the 82 Divisional Task Force Battalion military base in Gwoza local government area of Borno State, abducting more than 100 women and children, burning homes, armored vehicles and businesses. Many residents were reported to have fled to nearby towns, leaving affected community of Ngoshe largely deserted. Senator representing Borno South, Senator Ali Ndume, confirmed the attack and called for intensified military operations in Sambisa Forest and the Mandara Mountains to check the resurgence of insurgency. Now, this attack in Borno State, we're seeing numbers going from 100 to 300 people being killed and kidnapped. And the numbers are mind-boggling. They are hard to understand. And of course, this comes a month, exactly a month after the attacks we saw in Woro community in Kwara State, where people were killed. The number is still unclear till today how many people were killed. But we do know that at least 176 people were kidnapped in Kwara State. And those 176 people are still being held by terrorists. I do not understand, because I do think that Nigerians are becoming overwhelmed with these impossible to understand numbers of people being killed and kidnapped across the country. And therefore, it's that we're moving from one atrocity to another without any resolution, because it is hard to understand how the country is going as normal as 176 people were carted off in Kwara State, taken to stronghold, Lakrawa strongholds in Kainji National Park, and they're still there. 1 month afterwards, we're now seeing another absurd number of people being taken either to the Sambisa Forest, to the Mandara mountain range there, the Nigeria and Cameroonian border, which is, of course, a stronghold of Boko Haram. And what we have also seen from these terrorists is that before the leader, before ISWAP killed the leader of Boko Haram, Shekau, they used to be... Shekau, rather. They used to be fighting amongst themselves, but we have now seen them collaborating. Now, what we're seeing seeing in Borno here looks like it's jazz fighters, but we've seen Boko Haram. Security researchers have posted that they see Boko Haram sending they're sending advisors to Lakurawa and Kainji National Park from Sambisa, right? We're seeing Boko Haram and ISWAP having coordinated attacks in northeastern Nigeria. We're seeing them provide tactical support, logistical support, financial support, and training to each other, which means that they're becoming more sophisticated. And it's becoming a larger challenge. And we're talking about a resurgence of insurgency that we never even fixed in the first place. And Nigerians are dying every day, being kidnapped. There were just reports of kidnappings in Abuja as well. I was just there yesterday. And we're living under fear, and it seems that there's no sort of reprieve. And now we're having drone technology being used. We're having our servicemen. Reuters reported that at least 14 Nigerian servicemen were killed in these recent attacks in Borno State. We're seeing our servicemen being killed. We're seeing our terrorists use more sophisticated weaponry and kamikaze drones and drone warfare. It is, I don't understand what's going on.
Everybody is overwhelmed, and I get the point of your, the fatigue that this sort of bad news, inflicts on people. When all you hear, all you see, when you wake up, open the TV, put on the TV, put on the radio, open social media, it's a barrage of bad news. It can be very overwhelming. It dampens the spirit, and therefore people just look at it. I mean, like you said, where else in the world will 100 or 300 people be killed or abducted, with soldiers also massacred? And we don't think that this is a war that we should face. What have we heard from the high echelon of the authorities about this dastardly act? What have we heard? And we are talking about Borno, the home state of the number 2 citizen, who during the campaign said that he will be directly in charge of security, while the commander-in-chief, will look after the economy. But then in his home state, where he governed for 8 years, where the state is being governed by the person that he at least installed, in a way, in quotes, this is what we are hearing, from Borno. It should weaken us. It's very concerning issue. It's a desperate situation that we really must, speak to candidly. And there are 2 important issues, for me. The first part will be all this coming at a time that we thought that the Americans were here to assist us. And Yorubas will say, Rishabu Legbemi, Fimisile Bushebami. The deity who cannot assist me, why don't you just leave me the way you met me? And I think that that's what many people will be thinking in terms of the Americans. Yes, like we said earlier, Americans are now distracted. They are facing other bigger challenges. But then what were they even meant to do here, other than that, ceremonial bombing, in Sokoto, that we don't even know, what that achieved, for us. And the other part will be, is it next week or in a few days' time, the president will be going to the UK, on a state visit, to King Charles. I do hope that he will find a way to solve this immediate problem. Bring people to book, bring people to justice. When we hear that America, a few other countries have named names about sponsors of terror, what have we done with that list? Are some of them not in Nigeria? Are we just going to leave it the same way we left, what the UAE did the other time? I do hope that the security advisor will not be part of the contingent that will accompany the president, because he has a job to do here, and it is in his domot. He should get his job done, not to go to the UK to go and gallivant and go and be part of the celebration with King Charles. He shouldn't be there.
I mean, at least Daniel Bola has gone to prepare the ground for President Tinubu.
We saw what happened. We saw what happened.
Incoherent babble.
We saw what happened. I mean, that's the point when it comes to the issue of insecurity, particularly from a man like him, all the flip-flop. You can't defend it. And let's speak the truth, because it concerns everybody. We're still talking Zambisa, Mandara Mountains. So what have we been doing all this while? Where they can move 100 people, 300 people at a go. No satellites is capturing. We can't go after anybody. Yet we are reading from AFP how much, was negotiated negotiated and paid the other time. It is not right.
Yes, I completely agree with you. There's no way to defend what's going on right now, but there are better ways to articulate points. I think one thing for me that was entirely shocking about watching that Daniel Abuala situation was how lightly he took everything, how he was giggling, laughing, trying to make, imagery. And that's the person who's supposed to advise our president on policy communication, cannot articulate a security plan, cannot articulate the security policy of the country, cannot articulate the security infrastructure of the country. That's the person advising our president, the biggest black nation in the world. That's what we have to offer the world.
I think he knew that he was going into a war that he couldn't win.
And then
his strategy was, how he won't get battered totally, and get knocked out. But of course, he got knocked down.
To giggle.
This is where we have to run.
Nigeria, my country. Nigeria, my country. That's what we have for you. What's the concept?